Emergency medical services exist to save lives, respond to serious medical emergencies, and provide critical care when every second counts. Then there are these callers who apparently thought 911 was a general customer service hotline for life's minor inconveniences. These are real reasons people actually called ambulances, proving that some individuals have never met a problem too small for emergency medical intervention. 1. One caller requested an ambulance because their pizza delivery was 30 minutes late, and they were experiencing starvation symptoms that required immediate medical attention and emergency food delivery services. They explained to dispatchers that hunger was a medical emergency and that paramedics should bring food along with medical equipment to treat their nutritional crisis. Emergency responders arrived to find a perfectly healthy person surrounded by snack foods who insisted that late pizza delivery constituted a dining emergency requiring professional intervention. The caller received a bill for emergency services that cost significantly more than ordering pizza from multiple restaurants simultaneously. 2. Someone called 911 requesting ambulance transportation to the grocery store because their car was in the shop and they needed emergency transportation to buy groceries before the store closed. They argued that food shopping was essential for survival and that ambulances should provide transportation services for critical errands that couldn't wait for normal transportation options. Paramedics explained that ambulances weren't taxi services, but the caller insisted that grocery shopping was a medical necessity that required emergency vehicle assistance. The caller was advised to use actual taxi services and received educational materials about appropriate emergency service usage. 3. A frantic caller demanded immediate medical response because they had discovered a gray hair and needed emergency consultation about rapid aging syndrome that might require immediate medical intervention. They claimed that sudden hair color changes indicated serious health problems and that paramedics should examine their scalp for signs of premature aging or hair-related medical conditions. Emergency responders arrived to find someone experiencing normal aging processes who insisted that gray hair appearance constituted a dermatological emergency. The caller learned about normal aging while receiving a bill for cosmetic consultation services. 4. One person called an ambulance because their internet connection was down, and they needed emergency technical support to restore their online access for essential digital life support systems. They explained that internet connectivity was necessary for their survival and that communication disruption constituted a medical emergency requiring immediate professional intervention. Dispatchers had to explain that internet service problems weren't medical emergencies and that technical support should be contacted through appropriate customer service channels. The caller was educated about emergency service priorities and referred to their internet service provider. 5. Someone requested emergency medical response because they had eaten too much at a buffet and needed professional assistance with food overload syndrome and immediate stomach relief services. They claimed that overeating constituted a digestive emergency and that paramedics should provide stomach pumping or professional eating recovery assistance. Emergency responders found someone who had simply eaten a large meal and needed to wait for normal digestion rather than medical intervention. The caller received expensive emergency consultation about portion control and normal digestive processes. 6. A caller demanded ambulance services because their neighbor's dog was barking loudly and they needed emergency medical treatment for noise-induced stress syndrome and sound-related health problems. They insisted that excessive barking constituted a health emergency and that paramedics should provide noise pollution medical treatment or sound therapy services. Dispatchers explained that noise complaints should be directed to appropriate authorities rather than emergency medical services. The caller was referred to animal control and received educational materials about stress management and appropriate complaint procedures. 7. One individual called 911 because they couldn't decide what to wear to an important meeting and needed emergency fashion consultation from paramedics who could provide professional wardrobe advice. They claimed that clothing indecision was causing severe anxiety that required immediate medical attention and professional style guidance from emergency responders. Paramedics arrived to find someone with a closet full of appropriate clothing who wanted fashion advice rather than medical care. The caller received an expensive lesson about emergency service priorities and was referred to fashion consultants. 8. Someone requested emergency medical response because their coffee maker had broken and they needed immediate caffeine intervention to prevent withdrawal-related health complications from lack of morning coffee. They argued that caffeine dependency constituted a medical condition and that paramedics should provide emergency coffee or treat their caffeine withdrawal symptoms. Emergency responders explained that coffee maker problems weren't medical emergencies and suggested purchasing coffee from commercial establishments. The caller was educated about actual withdrawal symptoms and appropriate medical care. 9. A caller demanded ambulance services because they had received a parking ticket and needed emergency medical treatment for citation-induced shock syndrome and legal stress complications. They claimed that unexpected parking fines caused severe emotional trauma, requiring immediate paramedic intervention and stress management therapy. Dispatchers had to explain that parking tickets weren't medical emergencies and that legal issues should be resolved through appropriate municipal channels. The caller was referred to traffic court and received information about legal consultation services. 10. One person called 911 requesting emergency medical response because they couldn't find their car keys and needed professional assistance with object location disorder and memory-related health concerns. They insisted that lost keys indicated serious cognitive problems requiring immediate medical evaluation and professional memory testing by emergency responders. Paramedics arrived to find someone who had simply misplaced their keys and needed to search their house rather than receive medical intervention. The caller received expensive consultation about normal memory function and organization strategies. 11. Someone requested ambulance transportation because they wanted to avoid traffic during rush hour and believed that emergency vehicles could provide faster travel services than normal transportation options. They claimed that traffic delays caused stress-related health problems requiring emergency medical transport to bypass congested roadways. Dispatchers explained that ambulances weren't traffic avoidance services and that emergency vehicle usage was restricted to actual medical emergencies. The caller was educated about appropriate transportation options and emergency service priorities. 12. A caller demanded immediate medical response because their smartphone battery had died and they needed emergency assistance with communication device failure syndrome and digital disconnection health problems. They argued that loss of phone connectivity constituted a medical emergency requiring immediate technical intervention from paramedics equipped with charging devices. Emergency responders had to explain that phone battery problems weren't medical emergencies and that charging stations were available at various commercial locations. The caller was referred to electronics stores and educated about emergency communication alternatives. 13. One individual called 911 because they had gotten a paper cut and needed emergency medical evaluation to determine if the injury required immediate surgical intervention or emergency tetanus treatment. They insisted that any cut, regardless of size, constituted a potential medical emergency requiring professional assessment and immediate wound care from trained paramedics. Emergency responders arrived to find a tiny paper cut that required a bandage rather than emergency medical intervention. The caller received expensive consultation about minor wound care and appropriate medical response priorities. 14. Someone requested emergency medical services because they had seen a spider in their bathroom and needed immediate assistance with arachnid encounter trauma and spider-related health emergency response. They claimed that spider sightings caused severe psychological distress, requiring immediate medical intervention and professional spider removal services from emergency responders. Dispatchers explained that pest control wasn't provided by emergency medical services and that spider sightings weren't medical emergencies unless actual bites occurred. The caller was referred to pest control services and educated about spider bite symptoms. 15. A caller demanded ambulance response because they had accidentally deleted photos from their phone and needed emergency technology assistance to recover irreplaceable digital memories before permanent data loss occurred. They argued that photo deletion constituted a digital emergency, requiring immediate technical intervention from paramedics trained in data recovery services. Emergency responders had to explain that data recovery wasn't a medical emergency, and that technical support should be sought through appropriate technology services. The caller was referred to phone repair shops and data recovery specialists. 16. One person called 911 requesting medical consultation because they couldn't remember if they had taken their daily vitamin and needed professional assessment of their supplement intake to prevent nutritional emergency complications. They insisted that vitamin confusion constituted a medical emergency, requiring immediate paramedic evaluation of their supplement schedule and nutritional status. Emergency responders found someone who was perfectly healthy and needed to establish a pill-taking routine rather than receive emergency medical intervention. The caller received expensive consultation about vitamin schedules and normal nutritional practices. 17. Someone demanded emergency medical response because their air conditioning had stopped working, and they needed immediate treatment for climate control failure syndrome and temperature-related health emergency services. They claimed that lack of air conditioning constituted a medical emergency, requiring immediate cooling intervention from paramedics, equipped with portable climate control devices. Dispatchers explained that appliance repairs weren't medical emergencies, and that cooling alternatives were available through normal channels. The caller was referred to HVAC repair services and educated about heat-related health precautions. 18. A caller requested ambulance services because they had received a large utility bill and needed emergency medical treatment for billing shock syndrome and financial stress-related health complications. They argued that unexpected expenses caused severe emotional trauma, requiring immediate paramedic intervention and stress management therapy from emergency medical responders. Emergency responders had to explain that billing disputes weren't medical emergencies, and that financial stress should be addressed through appropriate counseling services. The caller was referred to financial advisors and utility company customer service. 19. One individual called 911 because they couldn't decide what to order for lunch and needed emergency nutritional consultation from paramedics who could provide professional dietary advice and meal selection guidance. They claimed that food choice confusion constituted a nutritional emergency requiring immediate medical intervention and professional menu consultation services. Dispatchers explained that meal planning wasn't a medical emergency and that dietary advice should be sought through appropriate nutritional counseling. The caller was referred to dietitians and educated about normal food selection processes. 20. Someone requested emergency medical response because their favorite TV show had been canceled and they needed immediate psychological intervention for entertainment loss trauma and media-related emotional emergency treatment. They insisted that show cancellation caused severe emotional distress, requiring immediate counseling from paramedics trained in entertainment industry psychology. Emergency responders had to explain that television programming wasn't a medical emergency, and that entertainment disappointment should be addressed through normal coping strategies. The caller was educated about grief counseling and entertainment alternatives. 21. A caller demanded ambulance transportation because they wanted to skip waiting in line at the DMV and believed that emergency medical transport could provide priority access to government services. They claimed that bureaucratic delays caused stress-related health problems, requiring emergency intervention and immediate government service priority through medical emergency status. Dispatchers explained that ambulances weren't queue-jumping services, and that government offices had standard procedures for all customers. The caller was educated about appropriate government service procedures and emergency transportation priorities. 22. One person called 911 requesting immediate medical consultation because they had hiccups and needed professional assessment to determine if their condition required emergency intervention or specialized hiccup treatment services. They insisted that persistent hiccups constituted a respiratory emergency requiring immediate medical evaluation and professional hiccup termination techniques from trained paramedics. Emergency responders arrived to find someone with normal hiccups who needed traditional remedies rather than emergency medical intervention. The caller received expensive consultation about normal hiccup treatment and respiratory function. 23. Someone demanded emergency medical response because they had gotten gum stuck in their hair and needed immediate assistance with adhesive contamination syndrome and professional gum removal services from emergency responders. They claimed that hair contamination constituted a hygiene emergency requiring immediate intervention and specialized removal techniques from medical professionals. Dispatchers explained that gum removal wasn't a medical emergency and that hair care solutions were available through normal grooming channels. The caller was referred to hair salons and educated about household gum removal techniques. 24. A caller requested ambulance services because they couldn't reach something on a high shelf and needed emergency assistance with elevation access disorder and height-related retrieval services from tall paramedics. They argued that inability to reach high objects constituted a mobility emergency, requiring immediate assistance from emergency responders equipped with ladders or height advantages. Emergency responders had to explain that reaching assistance wasn't a medical emergency and that step stools were available through normal retail channels. The caller was educated about appropriate assistance requests and home safety equipment. 25. One individual called 911 because they had seen their ex-boyfriend with someone else and needed immediate medical treatment for relationship trauma syndrome and emergency emotional support services from trained counselors. They claimed that unexpected relationship discoveries caused severe emotional distress, requiring immediate psychological intervention and professional relationship counseling from emergency responders. Dispatchers explained that relationship issues weren't medical emergencies and that emotional support should be sought through appropriate counseling services. The caller was referred to therapists and educated about emotional coping strategies. 26. Someone requested emergency medical response because their favorite restaurant was closed and they needed immediate assistance with dining disappointment disorder and food service emergency consultation. They insisted that restaurant closures constituted a nutritional emergency requiring immediate meal alternative assistance from paramedics familiar with local dining options. Emergency responders had to explain that restaurant schedules weren't medical emergencies and that alternative dining options were available through normal research. The caller was educated about restaurant hours and meal planning strategies. 27. A caller demanded ambulance services because they had accidentally worn mismatched socks and needed emergency fashion consultation to assess whether their wardrobe malfunction required immediate clothing intervention services. They claimed that sock coordination failures constituted a social emergency requiring immediate style assessment and professional wardrobe correction from emergency responders. Dispatchers explained that clothing coordination wasn't a medical emergency and that fashion advice should be sought through appropriate style consultation. The caller was referred to fashion advisors and educated about wardrobe planning. 28. One person called 911 requesting immediate medical evaluation because they had forgotten someone's name and needed professional assessment of their memory function to determine if forgetfulness indicated serious cognitive health problems. They insisted that name confusion constituted a neurological emergency requiring immediate memory testing and cognitive evaluation from trained medical professionals. Emergency responders found someone experiencing normal forgetfulness who needed social interaction practice rather than medical intervention. The caller received expensive consultation about normal memory function and social skills. 29. Someone demanded emergency medical response because they had run out of toilet paper and needed immediate assistance with hygiene supply emergency services and professional bathroom supply delivery from emergency responders. They claimed that toilet paper shortages constituted a sanitation emergency requiring immediate supply intervention and professional hygiene consultation services. Dispatchers explained that household supplies weren't medical emergencies and that retail stores provided bathroom supply solutions. The caller was educated about household inventory management and appropriate shopping procedures. 30. A caller requested ambulance transportation because they wanted to avoid paying for a taxi and believed that emergency medical transport was a free alternative to normal transportation services. They claimed that transportation costs caused financial stress, requiring emergency intervention and professional travel assistance through medical emergency classification. Emergency responders had to explain that ambulances weren't free taxi services and that medical transport was reserved for actual health emergencies. The caller was educated about appropriate transportation options and emergency service billing procedures. 31. One individual called 911 because they couldn't open a jar and needed emergency assistance with container access disorder and professional jar opening services from strong paramedics. They insisted that inability to open containers constituted a nutrition emergency, requiring immediate food access intervention and specialized opening techniques from emergency responders. Dispatchers explained that jar opening wasn't a medical emergency and that opening tools were available through normal retail channels. The caller was educated about kitchen tools and appropriate assistance requests. 32. Someone requested emergency medical consultation because they had accidentally liked an embarrassing social media post and needed immediate assistance with digital embarrassment syndrome and social media emergency management services. They claimed that online mistakes constituted a social emergency requiring immediate digital intervention and professional social media correction from emergency responders. Emergency responders had to explain that social media errors weren't medical emergencies and that online mistakes should be addressed through platform support. The caller was educated about social media management and digital communication skills. 33. A caller demanded ambulance services because they had been placed on hold by customer service and needed emergency intervention for telephone wait syndrome and professional phone queue management assistance. They argued that extended hold times constituted a communication emergency requiring immediate intervention and professional customer service advocacy from emergency responders. Dispatchers explained that customer service waits weren't medical emergencies and that phone problems should be resolved through appropriate business channels. The caller was educated about customer service procedures and communication alternatives. 34. One person called 911 requesting immediate medical response because they had discovered their milk was expired and needed emergency nutrition consultation to assess potential food safety health risks from dairy product confusion. They insisted that food expiration constituted a nutritional emergency, requiring immediate dietary assessment and professional food safety evaluation from trained medical professionals. Emergency responders found someone who needed to check expiration dates rather than receive emergency medical intervention for normal food safety practices. The caller received expensive consultation about food storage and expiration date management. 35. Someone demanded emergency medical assistance because they couldn't remember where they parked their car and needed immediate intervention for vehicle location disorder and professional parking memory assessment services. They claimed that car location confusion indicated serious cognitive problems requiring immediate medical evaluation and professional memory testing from emergency responders. Dispatchers explained that parking problems weren't medical emergencies and that lost vehicles should be located through normal search procedures. The caller was educated about parking organization and memory improvement strategies. 36. A caller requested ambulance transportation because they wanted to get to work faster and believed that emergency vehicles could provide express commuting services during rush hour traffic conditions. They claimed that work attendance was essential for health and that transportation delays constituted an employment emergency requiring immediate travel intervention. Emergency responders had to explain that commuting wasn't a medical emergency and that work transportation should be arranged through normal channels. The caller was educated about transportation planning and emergency service priorities. 37. One individual called 911 because they had gotten food stuck between their teeth and needed emergency dental intervention to prevent oral cavity blockage syndrome and immediate professional tooth cleaning services. They insisted that food particles constituted a dental emergency requiring immediate oral intervention and specialized removal techniques from medical professionals. Emergency responders found someone who needed dental floss rather than emergency medical intervention for normal eating cleanup. The caller received expensive consultation about basic dental hygiene and oral care practices. 38. Someone requested emergency medical response because their horoscope had predicted bad luck and they needed immediate psychological intervention for astrological anxiety disorder and professional fortune management services. They claimed that negative horoscope predictions caused severe emotional distress, requiring immediate counseling and professional astrology consultation from emergency responders. Dispatchers explained that horoscope concerns weren't medical emergencies, and that astrological anxiety should be addressed through appropriate counseling. The caller was educated about anxiety management and realistic fortune telling. 39. A caller demanded ambulance services because they had accidentally double-booked social plans and needed emergency scheduling consultation to manage appointment conflict syndrome and professional calendar coordination services. They argued that schedule confusion constituted a social emergency requiring immediate intervention and professional time management assistance from emergency responders. Emergency responders had to explain that calendar problems weren't medical emergencies and that scheduling conflicts should be resolved through personal communication. The caller was educated about time management and social coordination skills. 40. One person called 911 requesting immediate medical evaluation because they had heard a strange noise in their house and needed professional assessment to determine if unexplained sounds indicated health hazards requiring emergency intervention. They insisted that unusual noises constituted an environmental emergency requiring immediate investigation and professional sound analysis from trained emergency responders. Emergency responders found normal household sounds that required home maintenance rather than medical intervention. The caller received expensive consultation about building acoustics and home maintenance procedures. 41. Someone demanded emergency medical assistance because they couldn't decide between two equally appealing vacation destinations and needed immediate consultation for travel choice paralysis syndrome and professional vacation planning services. They claimed that vacation confusion constituted a decision-making emergency requiring immediate intervention and professional travel advice from emergency responders. Dispatchers explained that vacation planning wasn't a medical emergency and that travel decisions should be made through appropriate research and consultation. The caller was educated about decision-making processes and travel planning resources. 42. A caller requested ambulance transportation because they wanted to avoid walking in the rain and believed that emergency medical transport could provide weather protection services during precipitation events. They claimed that rain exposure constituted a health risk requiring immediate protective intervention and professional weather avoidance assistance through medical emergency classification. Emergency responders had to explain that weather avoidance wasn't a medical emergency and that rain protection was available through normal retail channels. The caller was educated about weather preparation and appropriate transportation options. 43. One individual called 911 because they had accidentally put salt in their coffee instead of sugar and needed emergency taste consultation to assess whether flavor mistakes indicated serious sensory health problems requiring immediate evaluation. They insisted that taste confusion constituted a neurological emergency requiring immediate sensory testing and professional flavor assessment from medical professionals. Emergency responders found someone who had made a simple kitchen mistake and needed to make fresh coffee rather than receive medical intervention. The caller received expensive consultation about normal taste function and kitchen organization. 44. Someone requested emergency medical response because they couldn't decide what movie to watch and needed immediate entertainment consultation for media selection disorder and professional viewing choice assistance from emergency responders. They claimed that entertainment confusion constituted a leisure emergency requiring immediate intervention and professional movie recommendation services from trained counselors. Dispatchers explained that movie selection wasn't a medical emergency and that entertainment choices should be made through personal preference and normal research. The caller was educated about decision-making skills and entertainment resources. 45. And finally, the ultimate unnecessary ambulance call occurred when someone contacted 911 because they had run out of ice cream and needed emergency dessert intervention for frozen treat deficiency syndrome, requiring immediate sweet emergency response services. They claimed that ice cream shortages constituted a nutritional emergency, requiring immediate frozen dessert delivery and professional sugar level management from emergency medical responders equipped with emergency ice cream supplies. They insisted that dessert emergencies were legitimate medical concerns and that paramedics should carry ice cream along with medical equipment to treat sugar-related health crises. Emergency responders arrived to find someone who needed to visit a grocery store rather than receive emergency medical intervention, and the caller received the most expensive ice cream recommendation in medical history while learning that frozen treat cravings weren't actually medical emergencies requiring professional intervention and emergency vehicle deployment. Here's the truth about emergency services. They exist to save lives during actual medical emergencies, not to solve everyday problems that require common sense rather than medical intervention. These calls prove that some people think 911 is a universal customer service hotline for life's minor inconveniences, and that emergency responders have unlimited time and resources to address problems that don't actually need emergency attention. The real emergency here is that while these ridiculous calls were being answered, actual medical emergencies were waiting for help that was delayed by ice cream shortages and parking problems. Subscribe for more proof that common sense isn't common, and that emergency services need protection from people who think everything is an emergency.